So what the Enneagram is, and a bit of the history of it, is it kind of started with the Desert Fathers. Desert Fathers were, if you don't know who the Desert Fathers were, they were the early kind of Christians just at the start of the monastic kind of era, when people started going, well, actually, I really want to develop my spiritual life in a different kind of way. And the Desert Fathers were these strange men, and there were a few women as well, who went out and they did things like they'd climb up onto a pole, it was quite a normal thing, in the middle of the desert. And they would just live up these poles. And they would just live a really simple, basic life. They would have a little platform on top, and then they would have their followers would come and bring them things and support them and give them food and stuff. But they would just live up these poles, and so they basically spent all their time thinking and praying. But I can't remember the name of him, but one of them came up with the deadly sins. This kind of idea of but there was eight. It was eight. And yeah, one of them got dropped by it because it was Dante. I can't remember Dante. One of Dante's books. It's not Inferno, the other one. The comedy, Divine Comedy. That's it. That he used 7 in there, and that was what was popularised, and very popularised by the film. But there was originally 8, and then loads of kind of different thinking's gone on through the years, and then basically time it got to the Jesuits, those ones who said, if you show me a boy at the age of 7, I'll show you the man, or whatever. They were really into their discipleship and how you develop, how you grow, and basically they used to use the Enneagram. And it had been developed by that point to be more than just some personality types. They'd added in a ninth kind of stumbling block that was in there. And they'd kind of developed these 9 types. And the thing about them was they were saying that we all kind of have kind of one thing that we trip up over, and it's a hurdle through all of our lives, that actually just whether it be gluttony, whether it be avarice, whatever it is, it's something that actually keeps on tripping us up. And that can look like lots of different things. It doesn't look, and so the gluttony for my type's the gluttony, doesn't mean that I'm always eating tons of food, although I am, but it's more just the desire to fill my life with good things so that I don't have to deal with the bad things. So it's like a running away from pain. And so they kind of come out in different ways. So actually it could be going to a gluttony of kind of going to the gym and obsessively going to the gym to kind of just keep myself busy from doing those things. And they developed this kind of system, and they used it. And it was always an oral tradition. They didn't write it down. They were very strict on the oral tradition of it. And it wasn't, and they said that this needs to be something that's learnt. It needs to be something that's discussed. It needs to be something that's talked about. It needs to be something that's done in community, not in isolation through reading books or anything like that. It needs to be done in relationship. And the interesting thing about it is it's not about, right, here's a box for you to fit in and we're going to describe exactly what you're like. It's instead saying, well, actually, here's your kind of base point, your starting point. And if you're under stress, then you'll go in this direction. If you're actually healthy and you're in a good place, then actually you'll go towards this direction. And you move towards the other points in the Enneagram, which is why we've got, like, it uses this. So you've got your 9 points around here, and they've got lines between them. And one line will show you where you go when you're in that place of peace and everything is well. And you go towards the good qualities of another character, another one of the personality types. And when things are going bad, you pick up the bad qualities of one of the other types. So it kind of points in different directions. So for me, I'm a type 7. When I'm in a good place, I can go towards the 5, and the 5 is the Marlon Brando. It's the quiet type, the slightly more brooding and slightly more disconnected. But actually what it means is I can actually just be still, not have to be frenetic, and I can actually step back from situations, not be completely involved in them. And when I'm in a stressed place, I go towards the 1, and the 1 is the detail person. It's the person who wants everything to be absolutely right, and I can get lost in that kind of legalism and things, and just be like, right, it's just. And I've seen that kind of. I'm not someone who really cares about details most of the time, but when I'm stressed, I can be paralysed by the details. And each of the personality types has that. What we'll do over the next few weeks, through this week and next 2 weeks, is we'll just look at 3 of the personality types at a time, and they kind of break down. There's 3 kind of rough areas. You've got your gut people up here, you've got your heart people down here, and you've got your head people over here. And of course this we'll have an idea of what that means, but I'll tell you what it kind of looks like and we're going to start with the gut people slightly, because that means if we work around, we get to me last, which is good, because then all of you can expose your hearts and souls, and I get to hold mine back for a little bit. So the gut centers, which is the 8, 9 and 1s, are driven by anger. But that doesn't mean that they're all fuming, angry kind of people, because the 8s externalize their anger, the 9s forget their anger, and the 1s internalize it. So they all kind of, anger is something that's underneath a lot of what they're about, but 8s let it out. 1s beat themselves up over it, and the 9s just go, I'm not angry. Then of course you get the passive aggression kind of coming out. And then you've got the heart center, and that's the 2, 3s and 4s, and and I'll just say about the gut people, sorry. They take in and respond to life instinctively or at the gut level. They tend to express themselves honestly and directly. And then the heart centers, these numbers are driven by feelings. 2s focus that outwards on the feelings of others. 3s have trouble recognizing their own feelings or even other people's feelings. And 4s concentrate on their attention inwardly on their own feelings. They take in and relate to life in their heart and are more image conscious than many others. And all this will make a lot more sense as we get around it. And then their head centers, which is actually where I am. I'm in this one because it's the 5, 6s and 7s. These numbers are driven by fear. 5s externalize it, 6 internalize it, and 7s forget it or try and run away from it. They take in and relate to the world through the mind. They tend to think and plan carefully before they act. So those are the different, kind of 3 different areas. What's that?
Thinking and planning and...
I do a huge amount of planning. It just doesn't always look like I have to. My brain's always kind of planning these things. It doesn't always make it to paper. So what I'll do is I'll just do a kind of a quick description of the 8s and 9s and the 1s, and none of us may be kind of those numbers, but we might think, oh yeah, that makes me think of so and so, such and such. And of course there's some people who will really shout those numbers, and when you go through these, you'll most probably think of one person that kind of typifies that type. Don't allow that to completely define it, because there's different kind of expressions of it. And as I say, someone who's a healthy type 7 will actually be quite kind of balanced and everything like that. Someone who's really in a really unhealthy place, that's for my type. That's the sort of quite often they're quite often into drugs, quite often kind of into alcohol, maybe just randomly having sex with everyone that they can find, and just trying to live a real hedonistic life, desperate to kind of run away from the anguish. And it's so yeah, so it won't necessarily look like the same person in some respects, but I feel like I need Carrie to be here to continue. I need Carrie to be here to continue. There we go. I don't want to miss out on anything.
Do you want a bit more light?
That'd be handy, yeah. Oh, look at that. Hello everyone, now you can see me in the video.
Sorry, Lenny.
So that's a brief little introduction. A word of warning, and I fell for this when I first kind of discovered the Enneagram, which was only a couple of years ago. I discovered it through reading a book about it and stuff, and did it outside of community, which wasn't the best way. But I went and fell for the mistake of going through everyone that I know and working out what type they were, and then telling them this is what type you are and this, that, and the other. Which, firstly, chances are I was quite wrong with some of them, and actually what that generally does is put people's backs up, because none of us like to be told what we're like. And so I encourage you, while you may think of different people when you hear this, don't try and box everyone in that you know, because we don't know the inner workings of people, and you'll just piss them off if you try and tell them you're such a blah 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 number. Right, the eights. Eights give out a powerful energy. They make their own way in life. Through their strength, they like control and being in charge. They often seek out confrontation as a way of finding out others' motivations. They would rather have you against them than not know where you stand. They approach situations in an all or nothing way. When you meet them, there is no confusion. What you see is what you get. They are quick to anger and are sometimes very forceful, but it doesn't last. And once it's over, the dispute is forgotten quickly. Anger and action enable them to feel strong. They are tough and tend to be excessive. Eights live by their instincts. The gap between impulse and action is brief. They consider themselves to be righters of wrongs. They are always ready to defend their friends and close family, especially when they think they are being treated unfairly. They have relatively little interest in existing rules, preferring to impose their own. What they like writing justice and protecting the weak, charging straight ahead, and fighting, winning a test of strength. What they dislike, lack of character, softness, people who beat around the bush. And I think the kind of the classic image for the eight, the classic kind of person, I think, is the turn back the clock 40, 50 years. Every CEO, everyone who kind of ran a company back in those days, the big brash men who went my way or the highway kind of thing, is your classic kind of eight character. And yeah, they know what's right, they know what's wrong, and they're gonna bloom well tell you that. He won't like me saying this to you, but Martin Turner is 8. He's a very well developed 8, and you see this if you have a kind of extended conversation with him. He will really be very confrontational. Once he's kind of he will tell me the whole time that he completely disagrees with me, even though he completely agrees with me, just because he wants to get a reaction out of me, and it'll really kind of blow up. But then like
Yeah.
a few minutes
Joking.
later, and he's not even joking, because he just likes to see that rise out of it, and a few minutes later won't hold it against you that you've disagreed with him or anything like that. Just likes that pushback. And another thing about the types in general, wherever you are on the Enneagram, you will have a wing, which means you'll lean towards one of the numbers on either side. And I've definitely got an 8 streak that actually sometimes you enjoy playing the devil's advocate just because you like to see the rise out of it. And an 8 doesn't necessarily like to play devil's advocate all the time, because they really do have some strongly held beliefs and they want to defend those and project them. Whereas I can enjoy playing devil's advocate just to get a kind of rise out of people. But Martin's forever trying to get a rise out of me, so he enjoys that.
Are you sure you're all right on there?
Yeah.
This
No, I'm good. And so their original sin is lust. And that doesn't just mean that it's not just a sexual lust, it's a kind of that real passionate kind of desire for things. When they're afraid of appearing weak, 8s ruin their lives with too much lust. They become excessive in everything, as if they have to prove they exist. Eating too much, drinking, being arrogant, with the music turned all the way up. They get into rages and make the walls shake. They may abuse their power. So that's when things go horribly wrong. That's when the lust really takes control. So that's a brief overview of the 8. And there's a lot more you can say on all of these, obviously. But let's just we'll give the brief overviews, and we'll get into more as we go along. Dun, dun, dun. Right, 9s. And so as you can see, when it comes to the gut thing, the anger, the 8s are externalizing it. They will let it out. If they've got a problem with you, they'll let you know. The 9s who deny their anger. 9s seek harmony and avoid conflicts. They create a calm and tranquil atmosphere around themselves. They have a special relationship with nature, and they have a routine and believe that you have to give things time. They are conciliatory and instinctively know how to put themselves in others' shoes, to the point of sometimes forgetting what they want themselves. When they study the Enneagram, 9s often identify with each of the types because they're so good at putting themselves in other people's shoes. They recognise that all points of view are valid. They are absent-minded and often have trouble differentiating between what is important and what isn't. They need time to make a decision. Making a choice is always difficult and is sometimes experienced as giving up a part of themselves in order to avoid conflicts and difficult choices. In order to avoid difficult choices, they lock themselves into a routine. Conflict terrifies them because it leads to separation, which is painful. They tend to let the situation get worse rather than face the potential explosion. They like tranquility, harmony, comfort, nature, a certain routine, stable schedules. They like compromise. They like listening to you. They like taking the time to experience life. They dislike having to take a stand. They dislike having to fight. They dislike saying no. And they dislike feeling your impatience. And their original sin is sloth. They, under the influence of their passion, which is sloth, when they are afraid of conflict, 9s ruin their lives with too much sloth. In this state, nines become indifferent. They busy themselves with everything and nothing in order to forget that they actually fundamentally disagree with whatever is at stake, but they prefer to keep quiet. They are unable to act because of their fear of conflict. And it's got a quote from a 9 here. When I go into my spiral of not wanting to express myself, I find a way to justify my non-action and stubbornly take refuge in it. For a long time, I thought that merging with someone was achieving supreme unity. Therefore, I expressed my opinion less and less in order to achieve this union. So the nines are wonderful people to be around because they they enter a room and everyone just feels a little bit more at peace, and it's kind of because they're able to identify with everyone. They're able to just kind of do that with all people. And the trouble with that is because they're so kind of used to identifying with other people, they sometimes forget themselves. They find it hard to know who they are and what they really want. And they really don't like conflict. They're trying to run away from the conflict and the anger that we all kind of have. They're trying to avoid that so much that they can end up just saying yes to everything. And then, because of course you can't agree with everyone's choices, that builds up resentment, and then that can kind of boil over eventually. So while they're trying to keep the peace, actually by avoiding conflict, ends up just eating away at them. But they're wonderful people to be around, and they can be massive help in negotiations and helping each other see other people's arguments. I'm married to a 9, so although she's not convinced. That's because she's a 9.
She just agrees with you to get on with it.
Yeah, no, she doesn't do this with me anymore. She's learnt to stand. She's matured in her 9ness, and she's managed to. she knows when to disagree with me. But yeah, Laura, in many respects, Laura is a classic kind of just. People love being her friend because they can sit and just talk at her for hours, and she just sits there and absorbs it all and identifies and goes, yeah, that's, bless you, all that. Right, and then the ones, and this will be the last one we'll look at tonight.
What made you choose those numbers?
What's
9s, 8s and 1s. Is it just what they are in the book?
Yeah, so on the circle ones, they're all the gut ones.
Oh, I see.
8, 9, 1. I'll give you these afterwards, but I don't like to give out handouts during it. I want all your attention on me. And at the end of all of this, if we're not sure whether kind of which one we are, or you kind of wanted to check, there's some really good kind of checklists in these. And when you go through that, you kind of tick 23 out of 25 kind of boxes. You're like, okay, I'm pretty sure that's my one then. And now the ones, and these are the ones who internalize their anger. So rather than getting angry with other people, they'll beat themselves up. And their original sin is anger. They are the true angry ones. For one's life is about living in a code of human behaviour, a moral code. They value correctness highly and try to live in accordance with their principles. They are disappointed by the world's lack of respect for rules and beliefs. Imperfection irritates them, and they are often seen as critical and demanding. They can always see how things can be improved and find it hard to let things pass when they could be better. They also get annoyed when they notice that one of their close friends or family isn't trying their best. They don't allow themselves to show emotion, so their anger is suppressed in order to function. They need a just cause into which to channel their anger. Their internal conflict between rigidity and sensitivity causes tension, including muscular tension, as an aside, which close friends and family can sometimes see. You can count on them, and when they are responsible for something, you can be sure that it will be done properly. For them, work generally comes before pleasure, and they are able to put aside their own desires so that their work can be done, and done well. They like behaving correctly, they like tidying up, they like being right, they like doing their job well, and they like improving themselves. They dislike cheaters, those who break the rules. They dislike unfair criticism, and they dislike disorder. When they become annoyed with a perceived imperfection, ones can ruin their lives with too much anger. When they allow themselves to be overwhelmed by their internal anger, ones lose their balance and they move off centre. And a quote from a one: I see everything in the world through my judgmental filter. Anger arises when they notice imperfection, whether it is their own or other people's or the world in general. If I fall into my trap of wanting everything to be perfect, anger makes me uncompromising, full of resentment. I lose all sense of humour and become critical, unbending, inflexible, and fussy. And the ones are actually, they are the detail people. They are the ones, because they're always looking for perfection. You want something proofread, you give it to a one, because they will see absolutely everything that's kind of wrong in it. The flip side of that is they also see everything that's wrong in themselves. So while they'll be able to see all this kind of stuff, they also have extremely high standards for themselves, which they'll never meet. So actually they'll be really hard on themselves as well, and will really kind of beat themselves up over things. I work with a one, and they're just always in that kind of place of being utterly frustrated, that, especially working with me, that actually there are all sorts of kind of loose edges and fraying things, and they want everything to be tidy. But the moment they do anything that they perceive as slightly wrong, you'll just get this torrent of apologies and everything, because they can't cope with the fact that they've managed to. You say it's all right, it's really not a big thing, but they're beating themselves up inside about it. So that's our first three types, the gut types. I'm going to stop that there. It's 28 minutes.